So before you guys see the interview part of the video, I just wanted to show you the new sleeves that just dropped on the Sleeve Chief website on Sunday. I wanted to show you how cards look in border sleeve. That's how they look like, but these are the actual sleeves I'm talking about. I think cards look really clean overall in their border sleeves, and these are the new ones. And what I really like about them is that they're packed 70 pieces together, so you can sleeve your main and side deck easily, and I think they look really, really good. So if you want to get the sleeves or any other accessories on the Sleeve Chief website, of course make sure to use the affiliate link in my description box below so you help the channel out, and also use code SHADOW at checkout for 5% off your entire order. Now let's begin with the video. Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm joined by Marcello Barberi. He is a pro player with many accomplishments, among which are getting first place at YCS London in 2014, becoming the European champion in 2017, going 17-0, and then getting third place at Worlds on that same year, as well as becoming the Hungarian national champion in 2019 and having more than 20 premier tops. Welcome. I'm really glad to have you here today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the nice introduction. So, hi guys. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about... Yeah, I'm excited as well. We're going to get into everything. But first off, let's just start with your pure beginnings, like when you got into the game and what really pushed you to become competitive, and what was it that you really loved about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while, we can say. But, I mean, as a lot of people my age, I guess, I did grow up just with Yu-Gi-Oh around. So I did watch the anime, and so I was excited as a kid when the cards came out. And I remember asking, my parents to buy me one of the structured decks back in the day. But then I discovered the, locals existed. So I remember... just growing up with the game, as mentioned. So one of my first sneak peeks was back in the day at Raids at the Monarch. So we're talking 2007, pretty much, when I was like 12 years old.
Okay.
But then from locals, I started to play a little bit more. And I think I went to my first larger events around 2010, 11. And because obviously, I had to convince my parents of financing the trips. But in 2011, I topped the first national championship I've been to, so the Italian national championship. And that really opened my eyes on the competition. And from that point on, I pretty much started to traveling a little bit more. And, from the first European events the year afterwards. And luckily I found, a very nice group of friends to travel with at the beginning. And I started to play a lot more events. To be fair, I had a little bit of a curse, I can say, because I basically, from 2011, I topped every single year every national championship I've been to. Including this up to date, but
wow.
And even the European championships I was doing well, but I think I lost like 5 or 6 YCSs at the bubble match. So every time I would get like 34th, 35th or something. And so I only topped my first YCS in 2014, and that was the year of essentially my accomplishments as getting into the pro stage, we can say. Because I think I topped 8 events in a row, and among them I barely missed out on the World Championship because I lost in top 8 at Euros. But then, as you mentioned, I did win YCS London, which was amazing for multiple reasons. First of all, because actually after the Swiss I got 33rd, so I shouldn't have been in the top cut.
Seriously?
But then they changed, they changed the standings, and because there was just one mistake, and so I got 32nd, and then I won the entire event, which it changed everything for me. Yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy because basically you have 5 minutes still today, pretty much, for the standings to get to the point where they are finalized, they cannot be changed. So yeah, that was an experience, and also that meant that I became the first Italian player to actually win a YCS, which was crazy because the Italian community has always been great, but again, they were cursed. I think before me there were like 4 or 5 finalists who lost, Italian players. And from that point on, it was a huge journey. I entered some teams, so I was, competitive on a real note. And yeah, the point of culmination was essentially for me just going to the World Championship.
Of course.
And when in 2017 they announced the world points for the first time, I couldn't miss out. But as you mentioned, funny enough, I grinded all year. And before the European Championship, I was guaranteed to go because I was the top point earner in Italy.
Yeah.
But then life is funny sometimes, and I did manage to go 17-0 at the European. So basically, I qualified twice in the same year for the World Championship. And again, for me, it's obviously a really important moment because it set another record, which up to date is technically still unbeaten because 17-0 is the most wins without a loss in Yu-Gi-Oh history. And yeah, afterwards, I've just loved the game so much. It changed my life, and I cannot stress enough how we are lucky to have it, to meet friends, travel around the world, and yeah, I really enjoy it. So
for sure, I think that's beautiful. So among your accomplishments, one of them is single-handedly making the Italian bad luck not the bad luck anymore. So like you saved the community, basically, you could say. So do you consider your European Championship like your biggest accomplishment, or what would you say made you the most proud? Everything that you did.
It has to be. At the same time, it was definitely unreal because, as mentioned, I remember getting super emotional in London because I don't say if I did deserve it in the terms that obviously I became much better later on, but I was still pretty good player, I would say. But it was an emotion, like so emotional. I remember getting out of the future match area, which was way different from it is today. Today, you are up on a stage, you are surrounded by players. Back in the day, it was still obviously on stream, but you were behind curtains, so you couldn't see anyone.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was way different. So I remember getting out and there was just a crowd of people who started, hugging me. A lot of friends, of course, but a lot of, I don't even remember. So yeah, it was beautiful. But yeah, the European Championship was special. It's at the same time, it's weird because, as mentioned, it's the only event I've ever played where I entered the event without pressure. Because my goal was going to the World Championship and I was qualified. So it's weird, but yeah, I mean, winning it was unreal as well. Though I gotta say, playing at the World Championship is just a unique experience. So yeah, I'm lucky to have a lot of very good memories. I gotta say, yeah.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's actually wild. I listened to your deck profile. Yeah, you said that you were quite chill, playing because you qualified already. So you're like, okay, whatever. Let's just go 17-0 and that's it.
Yeah, which at the same time is the opposite for my opponents because arguably outside of the World Championship, the European Championship is the more important event of the year.
It is.
Everybody's playing with so much pressure because they want to go there. So I think that played a huge role because my opponents were freaking out and I was chilling, essentially.
Of course, yeah. But I mean, but you were grinding the entire year. I also looked at your Twitter and I saw you posting a lot of results, and it's like, of course, I mean, if you put in all the work, it's obviously that you got the results. And with you being as consistent as you were, like you pretty much remained consistent for the best part of a decade, which is literally insane. So what would you say is like the most important thing you could say about yourself as a player that really helped you remain as consistent as you did for all these years?
Yeah, as you mentioned, and thank you, of course, for the kind words, but I've lived through most of Yu-Gi-Oh areas and eras, and we can say that adapting is the number one skill because the game has changed so much. Like I've lived through a lot of different things, going from priority, drawing 6 cards, going first, link summoning, like a lot changed. And I think I saw a lot of really good players throughout the years, but then maybe were really good just in one period and then they couldn't really adapt. So what I say for me specifically, I would say that I've always considered deck building one of the most important skills you can have, alongside technical play, of course.
Yes.
But I think deck building is by far the most important thing. And I gotta say that there are a few players in the history of the game who have been consistent for a lot of years. And I think pretty much they're always the deck builders. Because, I don't know, you have something in your mind which is just like the beauty of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that you can play with cards that have been out for 20 years.
Yes.
There is no rotation, there is no such thing. So I think when you're used to using your brain in just creative ways, it's easier to adapt. And for me specifically, obviously, I cannot say I was a bad technical player. I was smooth with my plays, but the deck building really plays its role in there. Yeah.
I think that's really cool that you mentioned it, because it was literally my next question. What do you think is most important? So you pretty much explained it all.
Yeah.
Do you think like basically you played a lot of meta decks, you could say, a lot of very, very strong decks at the time when you were successful and had the accomplishments. Do you feel like you don't really like to turn to I don't know, roguish decks, in like quote unquote roguish decks, or you know, decks like that? Or what's your thought process behind choosing a deck for an event?
Okay. I tend to analyze most of them. It is true that most of the times I did went with the best deck, but I think to me deck building is not just the deck you choose. So that's the, like, if you see it from from the outside and you just consider the deck. For example, you could say, I don't know, Necrots, Zodiac, whatever. But I think in my case specifically, sometimes it did change. Because, for example, as mentioned, I've had a lot of friends and very good testing groups throughout the years, which we all helped each other. But on top of my mind, for example, there is the Paleozoic deck back in Zodiac format, which me and Joshua pretty much developed together. Then I did commentary for the event. He won it, but sometimes you can get out of the blue. But in general, my feeling was I was really creative with the best deck. So I would play the best deck often because I thought it was going to be the best.
Of course.
But I came up very often with weird things. For example, I got second place at the Italian National Championship back in Negros format, and I was the first player to play Shadow cards in the deck. So I played the Shadow Fusion, So what I was good at was, I think, finding the way to change the best deck with some very unique tech cards. And for me specifically, it was obviously analyzing what the best deck was, and then trying to come up with ideas that would surprise my opponents. And really, I think the side deck was the thing I was the best at. Probably among the best in the history of the game, I would say. Often because a lot of players, and I saw some of your past interviews, you mentioned how, a lot of players disregard side decking.
Yes.
If you think about it, you are going to play at least 50% of your games with a side deck, and most likely, 66. So that means that the side deck is arguably more important than the main deck at times. And I think that's where I usually put a lot of creativity in. And for example, playing cards like just another thing that came to my mind, Spiral was one of those other really popular decks.
Yes.
And I was the only player who went second with the deck. I did pretty well with the idea. And in game one, I meant. And then every single event afterwards was won, by Jesse Cotton and then Raphael, both going second with Spiral. So, it's also having some ideas with the deck. Yeah.
Oh, for sure, 100%. And like, what do you think is like the most important thing when you approach, building a side deck, like you mentioned? Because a lot of times, especially in a format right now, which is very diverse, and a lot of formats are insanely diverse. Like literally, this format like makes my head hurt. It's there's a lot of decks. Is what I'm trying to say. So how do you choose which decks to respect? Like, how do you prepare?
As you mentioned today, it's quite tough. I'm not gonna lie. For two reasons, actually, because on the one hand, the format is very diverse. On the other hand, we have been seeing an exponential growth in numbers. Like YCS is now have consistently 3,000 players, which is crazy.
It's wild.
Yeah, so that's add to the diversity. So what I would say in general is you analyze the format, first of all. If there are obviously, like the past format with tier elements being the best deck, obviously was quite different. But usually if the format is not with like 10 different decks, you should try to cover those. And I'm a big fan of taking a risk and understanding a decision. So basically, my goal when I enter a tournament is not to make it to the top cut, is to win it all. And I think that to win it all, you need to take risks, which means rather than siding like 2 to 3 cards against every matchup, I want to have, I don't know, 4, 5. I want to have a good number against the most popular decks or the decks I feel like I need to play against. If I have no cards or, you know, just a couple of very generic cards against some niche matchups, I'm okay with that. I'm taking the risk because the chances are once you make it to the top cut, you're going to face the most represented decks. And again, I'm okay with losing before top cut. But I know that if I make it to the top cut, I have the better chance of winning because of my side deck. So usually that's my criteria. And for a meta like this is obviously quite tough because there are a lot of different decks. But again, you can maybe take into the consideration Kashtira, Sprite, Runic decks, and maybe ignore other decks and take a risk. As mentioned, you're gonna have to take risks. And I think it's if your goal is winning, that's the way to go. If your goal is making it to the top cut, it's a different story, I would say. Yeah.
I'm really glad you pointed this out because a lot of times players will actually deliberately decide, okay, I'm trying to top versus I'm trying to win. And I think that's a very, very important thing to differentiate. And a lot of times maybe people will not prepare their deck to win because they might be afraid of losing that many times in Swiss where they don't make it to top cut at all. So then it doesn't even make sense anymore. So what do you think is like the most important approach? Like how do you analyze the format and decide, okay, I'm trying to win versus I'm trying to, you know, how to like realize what your strong suits are and really decide how you're trying to build your deck accordingly?
Yeah, it's definitely a skill. So it's something you learn with experience. But I changed throughout the years. Obviously, you start without any results. So
of course.
So, I mean, everyone starts from zero. So getting it to the top cut at the beginning was also my goal. So as mentioned, I like to be inconsistent. For me personally, I gotta give a shout out to Stefano Memoli, who for many players might be unknown today, but back when I started, he was my idol. He is a player who won the European Championship. He got second at the World Championship and a lot of incredible results back in the day. And my relationship with him, who is still a really close friend of mine, really changed this perspective. He really made me understood why and what it is to aim to win. Because essentially, I think the biggest mistake is analyzing or misunderstanding why you lost at an event. So what you should really focus on is your losses rather than your wins, and try to do it from a rational point of view as much as possible. And what I mean is that when you want to win an event, some luck has to be there. That's obvious because it's like 17, 18 rounds. A little bit of luck is needed, but you need to really win those games where you are behind. And what I mean is, as I was saying before, you need to take some risks. You're never gonna have the perfect deck that wins against every single matchup, every single game. So you need to just, I mean, I have some math in my background which can show, but what I did a lot was study those percentages, study statistics on, you know, the cards, and at some point just take some risks. If I'm gonna lose, obviously that makes it so I think the first rounds are the most important, where you should really focus. And I think that's a big mistake for a lot of players, because when you lose round one, your chance of playing against rogue decks is like exponentially higher.
It's literally sky high.
But in general, basically what I would do is I would focus as much as possible on the most played deck, find understand how to play it, of course, and then find what's beats, like why am I losing with this deck, and write down why I'm losing with the deck, because that's gonna be what I'm gonna side or what I'm gonna main for that deck. And once that's analyzed for me, once I have down the cards that beat those decks, I just focus and play those. And if I'm gonna play against other matchups, that's fine. I get it. Like, I'm not gonna win every single event I enter, but I think a great example of this is Chris LeBlanc, for example, or like some players like for example me, as you mentioned, I have basically a little less than 30 premier event tops, which is a lot, but I've only won like 3 events or something like this, we could say, which is not a huge number if we compare it to the amount of top cuts, but technically it is. And the reason is, once you get to the top cut, you should prioritize having your chances. And I think that's a big mistake that even very accomplished player makes, where they would build these decks which are very generic. They're gonna win because they are better on technical play than their opponents.
Yes.
But once they get to the top cut, technical play doesn't get you there often, and you're gonna get blown out by cards like, I don't know, Sanctum with Sight back in the day, Anti-Spell, these very unique cards that really steal games. It doesn't matter how skilled you are if they flip, you know, a Sanctum with a Sight or a card like that.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what really you should pay consideration to. Yeah.
I love that you actually, you know, play the deck, realize what the deck loses to, and then decide how to side against it. Do you feel like people should be doing this with like probably every single of the top decks, unless like the format is insanely diverse? But if there's like 3 to 4 top decks, or right now people should be playing, I don't know, Brande, Kashtira, Naturia, Runic versions, like just testing them, all of them. Do you feel like that's a good approach?
It obviously takes time.
Yes, of course.
So the way I used to do it sometimes is, if you have a testing circle of friends, you obviously can save time if you trust them enough.
Yeah.
So if you do, I would definitely consider doing that. Because as mentioned, I think more than understanding how to play those decks, it's much more important to understand how to beat them and what they lose to, both for deck building, but also in play. Because I think once you're playing against a deck, you really need to know where your interruptions need to, you know, be used.
Yes.
If you take a deck like, for example, Marcus Patel, who won the European Championship with Ricca, and nobody knew what the cards did, I can tell you 100% that if they at least knew where to activate the interruptions, I'm not saying he would have won, but he would have had it much tougher. So definitely try and...
So like we talked about deck building quite a bit, but I still wonder, when you choose to test some cards, how do you determine which of them are worthy of playing? You said that you know, try to find outs to some decks, but like, for example, right now there is literally like 20 cards you could fit in your side deck, and you have to play like play sets of those probably, and then you need to play like 15 tech cards in the main, and preferably not go over 40, and there's like 100 things you need to think about. So how do you approach testing, even by yourself? Do you like to go through combos, write down stuff, like all of that basically?
Yes. Okay. So I think these formats are the toughest one by far, as you mentioned. Because you're gonna need to make, I already mentioned it, that you need to take some decisions and take risks.
Of course, yes.
But in formats like this, you need to take a lot more than you would be comfortable with.
Yeah, probably.
In general, what I would do when testing a card specifically is obviously understand, but that's sometimes obvious, whether it's good for going second, for going first. And I would distinguish 2 types of cards mostly. One, which are cards that can be generic, which usually are a little underwhelming compared to the bombs, we could call them. But obviously cover more matchups. For example, it could be an Ash Blossom today, which is really strong against Branded, but against the other matchups, at most is gonna be, you know, a 1-for-1, or sometimes it's gonna be okay, sometimes not. But it's obviously activatable against pretty much every deck that exists in Yu-Gi-Oh! On the other hand, though, you have cards that, as mentioned, the Sanctums. I played Sanctum, I think, in pretty much every deck I've used since I won in 2014 with them. Because you know, those cards, I think, as mentioned, I'm not underestimating myself, because I thought at my peak I was one of the best, even technical player. But even then, I don't want to overestimate my chances. I think you need some cards that just steal the games. So even when I look now at some side decks, or for example, let's take into consideration Samir and his deck that he won the YCS London. He had some unfair cards in the deck. He's obviously a really good player, but I think you need some auto-win cards like, I don't know, Anti-Spell Fragrance in some matchup. Or I don't like the approach of just playing a lot of generic cards because it makes a deck that is really consistent, which is obviously good. But you're gonna lose to your opponent playing those unfair cards. So I think you should have a good mix of them. But usually I make this distinction between cards that are specific, if we want to call it a tier list, we could say. Cards that are specific but really, really strong when they resolve against cards that are generic. And I think the way to go is have a mix of these and don't underestimate going first. Because I've seen... even one of the interviews you had, I think it was with Rafael maybe, which is a close friend of mine. But the concept was if you go first, you already have an advantage. Which is true. But at the same time, your opponent knows this. And so most of everyone's side deck is going to be going second cards. So once you get to the side decks, I think there are two options. One, you need to side some unfair going first cards because that's the only way to beat their going second. Or, which I think is the number one skill after siding that not many players have, make your opponent go first. So
what's your take on that?
I've won plenty of games with this.
Seriously? I mean, it's very dangerous, you could say.
I know. I like to live dangerously. Sometimes it works out, but it's. I think it's really good sometimes. Obviously, it takes courage to do it.
Yes.
But your opponent is gonna have. Its deck is not gonna be optimal because he's gonna side at the 4 going second. He's gonna have a lot of these cards like evenly matched, Kaijus, Kurikara, Sphere Mode, all of this stuff which is completely useless. And I think it's something that you should consider a lot more when preparing a deck. And sometimes, I'm not even gonna lie, sometimes I prepared it before the tournament. So I would be like, this matchup, which you can see nowadays maybe in Cash Tira mirror matches, a lot of players after siding go second. But sometimes I improvised. Sometimes I saw decks, for example, Paulo, the Brazilian player, is memed for playing, 15, 18 end traps consistently.
He did,
So sometimes I improvise at tournaments. I saw, okay, this player is playing this side deck. Okay, I'm gonna let him go first. I don't care if my deck is not optimal either. He's gonna have problems with it, and I think it works out really well at times.
Okay, so I mean, okay, that's risky, but you said you like to live dangerously. So we talked about deck building quite a bit. How do you approach technical play, which is the other side of things, almost as equally as important, but do you prefer to test with your testing group, or do you maybe like to theorize with your testing group and not as much play as like talk about plays and cards? And also I really loved when I did the interview with Pak, he mentioned how he likes to watch people play and how you gain a lot by learning the people's what's the word, like their thought process behind their plays. So what's your approach?
It's similar to what you just mentioned. So sometimes obviously having your testing group is really good, and what I would focus is rather than everyone plays at the same time, I've had 2 of the people just play, and then the rest can observe and comment, maybe stop the play and discuss whether that was the optimal one. But at the same time, I have I have witnessed a lot of changes, as mentioned, throughout the history of the game.
Yes.
And I gotta throw some shade at the theorists because obviously there are nowadays spreadsheets about all the different combos that you can do. I think Yu-Gi-Oh is much more than that because everything doesn't always go according to plan. So it's obviously good to memorize the combos, know what to do, what not to do, and that should be a part of your testing, which I hope shouldn't take too long to to get into. But I think I cannot tell you how much I've played. Then I don't know, the game for some reason, it can be entrops, it can be, you know, cards like I mentioned, evenly matched lava golems. Once the game gets to the grind game, I think that's where you see the difference between an experienced Yu-Gi-Oh player. Because I think once you get to the grind game, you go back to that time wizard formats, we could say.
Oh, for real?
Where,
it literally
you know,
feels that
the
way.
advantage matters, and you're not gonna know what to do if you based it on theory, because you're not gonna cover every single matchup. So experience obviously is not something that you can learn in a day, but just playing as much as possible is important, because as mentioned, you're not playing solitaire. When you play against another opponent, unless they bricked, they are gonna interact with you. And obviously there are formats in which there is less interaction, but I think playing is really important. You cannot just base it on theory, because you need to develop these skills of just improvising, bluffing sometimes, you know, and it's needed. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Do you think playing older formats is also a good way? Like, for example, Edison format is like literally popping off. People are all about it. And like, it's amazing. Literally, I personally am really into it. And like, what do you think? Is that like an advantage? Because I believe it is, like playing that kind of format. To just think about like, even card advantage, like literally counting cards and realizing, is your opponent ahead? What should I do to mitigate the difference and all of that? Like,
absolutely, just thinking ahead. I'm a huge fan of Time Wizard. I think it's great for the game. Obviously, it has infinite potential, because you never know. Today it's March 2010, so Edison, whatever. Tomorrow it can be any other format that we find out was much better than it looked. And I think obviously you cannot expect everyone to be on the same experience level as someone as me, Joshua, Rafael, these players who have been for like 15 plus years in the game.
Yeah.
And I think Time Wizard is a good way to... It can look distracting, because maybe you think you're playing something that has nothing to do with what you do now, because it's like literally 13 years ago, if we talk about 2010. But you develop some skills that are really important. So obviously it can work out. It's not necessarily the only way to do it. But I think, as you mentioned, playing with card advantage, realizing what it is, what can be done, even life points. Because nowadays life points don't matter at all. Most of the times. Back in the day, they were a resource. So sometimes you need to think even in that regard. I've seen a lot of players who, for example, obviously on stream, especially when I commentate, they just rely on their combo and they don't even look at the life points. And sometimes they could have just went for an aggressive push and just go for game, you know, instead of giving your opponent another turn.
That's really important. A lot of times, like, it's like the smallest play of literally like switching one monster to attack and attacking, and then you win. But you don't. You give him another turn, and then you get like OTK'd or something. So, no, for sure, it's important. You talked about like some mentality, and I also want to focus on that. How do you manage to, like, even at events and you went 17-0 and all of that, like, how do you manage to maintain focus and to have that mentality, even if you maybe lose a game or a match, if you drop a match in Swiss or something, to really maintain and like just continue pushing forward?
It's definitely tough. I think I was lucky or like blessed on the one end, because I was always really focused, like in general. I don't know. So I never had many issues with this. And I remember a lot of times now you guys are blessed by playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Against the organization, and just the TO, I mean, has been improved so much. Usually you're done with day one, even though we have 3,000 people at like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. at worst. I've played the last round of day one at YCS at 1 a.m. So,
that's the old time rules probably and all of that. Yeah, it took a little longer.
Yeah, that was wild back in... of course. I think overall, some tips which might sound super generic are just... when it comes to focus, just stay hydrated. You know, I cannot stress enough the importance of just like drinking, taking a rest. But at the same time, I think the main shifting mentality is take a game, one game at a time. Don't focus too much on, on what went wrong, what went right during the game. If you have, like, talking to your friends about what happened really should be without bias, in the terms that if you learned something valuable for the next round, for example, I don't know, your opponent just made a combo that's better than yours, and you're like, oh wow, really? That's good. That's good knowledge, you know? But if they top deck something, obviously it's gonna hurt, but if you're not kicked out of the tournament, try to get rid of that as much as possible. And I think that's the really important thing. You just take a game at a time, and even in Top Cut, that's huge. Just take a game at a time, don't stress out too much, and in Top Cut, it doesn't matter whether you were 11-0 or like 8-3 or something in Swiss. Everything is reset. So yeah, just take a game at a time, and you'll be good.
All right. And then also talking about like actually sitting down and playing against the person. You mentioned a bit of like bluffing and all of that. And I want to talk about also like literally like reading your opponent or trying to figure out, because a lot of times people will play, and I'm guilty of that myself, and a lot of players that might not be as great, when they sort of like feel like they're playing with themselves and they don't always consider, I don't know, the opponent's graveyard, or what is it that the opponent could top deck that really saves them? How should I prepare for their follow up? Because it is tough. It's really tough to think about everything that is possibly going to happen. So what is it that's the most important to keep in mind when you're up against an actual person?
Yeah, it's, as you mentioned, it's so different. That's why, again, I throw some shade at the pure theorists, and that's it. Because going back to like my result at the European Championship, it's not by chance that it was the year in which every single weekend, to grind points, I went to a different regional, whether it was in any city in Italy or whatever. I played the most Yu-Gi-Oh! I've ever played, and playing in real life, it's so much different. I think mine, honestly, I talked about deck building, I talked about, you know, technical play, but playing in real life, I think, was probably even my best skill, or like just reading, bluffing, obviously when it's legal to do, not like
no, of course,
because obviously there is a thin line, but just reading your opponent is so important. Like when they play, you can tell so much, and I can tell you a lot of times, even in the finals, like both times I played on stream in the finals, my opponent gave away a crucial tell. For example, and sometimes I've quoted this, in game 3 of the finals of the European Championship, I had to make a huge decision in the last round. It was basically timeout, because I summoned a Zodiac Terrorblade, which has the effect, when normal, you can discard 1 to draw 1.
Yes.
But back then, 2 very popular cards were Flying Sea and Ghost Ogre. So if I were to activate the effect and get Ghost Ogred, I would lose, or I would have nothing. While if they had Flying Sea, I would also, I didn't have much of a backup in my hand, so I needed to draw a card.
Okay.
And when I summoned it, basically I said, think if using the effect. I picked up my extra deck just to think what line should I go for. And immediately, as soon as I picked up my extra deck, my opponent, which was also Italian, was like, wait, I didn't say okay.
Oh.
Which gave me away, yes, 100% Flying Sea at least.
Yeah.
So I used the effect. He had the Flying Sea. And I drew into Dimensional Barrier, which won me the European Championship.
Oh my God.
Yeah, these kind of things, I think getting a tell on your opponent is huge. And I think I just suggest everyone to obviously get ready, play with your friends, have your theory ready, but play some regionals, play some tournaments before, especially going to these huge events. And you only learn by experience those kind of things, I would say.
For sure. I really love this story. This is literally hilarious. Oh my God. And also at like the stage, it's literally the finals. Like, oh my God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, basically we talked about playing a lot, but in recent years you also shifted to commentary, even though you got second place, I think, last year at nationals. So still, you're still going strong, but you're also commentating. So what was it that really like brought you to it? What do you like about it, and what made you do it?
Yeah, so obviously, as mentioned, I have been around in the game for a lot, and I was lucky to get gifted, I guess, this opportunity, which actually came back in, I think, 2016 for just a very small round, but essentially, they asked me whether, obviously, when you win, when you do well, you often have interviews with on stream.
Yeah,
And
of course.
so what what happened was they noticed my English was fine, I guess. And so they had this idea, which was great for me to just have a try. So I did just one round, I think, back at a European Championship in 2016, I believe. And it was great. So I had no expectation on mind about doing something like this back in the day, but I started to loving it. And the reality is, once I did play for a while afterwards, I really missed it, because there was a moment in which between 2017 and 2018, obviously I was playing a lot.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have much time to focus on doing commentary, and I missed it. So I love that. Basically, I think I have done enough in a way in the game.
Yeah.
My only goal left would have been to win the World Championship.
Yes.
And I got very close, but you also have to be realistic with what's needed to do it. And I love just doing commentary arguably as much. And the reason is that I just love Yu-Gi-Oh! Also from a psychological point of view, watching deck lists. And when you sit down at an event, you're gonna only see of those 3,000 people, basically the 11, 12 you play against in Swiss.
Yeah.
And at best, the 17, 18 if you get all the way.
Yes.
And that's it. You have no interactions, of course, outside of talking with your friends. When I do commentary, I see everything, you know.
Yes.
I have my eyes on thousands of people, what they play, how they play, and it's so much fun for me to even just, analyze it from an external point of view and just a different view on the game. At the same time, I can just still be at events, which is great because I still get to meet all my friends, and it just brings a different light to the game. And I also think it changed a lot compared to the previous years. I hope, and the feedback was really positive from the outside, having someone like me and now the other, obviously, colleagues, which are players, and they have really good knowledge about the game, because I think it made the stream a lot better. And I really have fun doing it. And I enjoy it a lot.
Is there a particular experience you maybe remember that's like your, I don't know, favorite one, or maybe like the weirdest deck list, or like something that really stuck with you from commentating?
There are two different, I would say. So on the one hand, the best was doing commentary at the World Championship, which was just unreal. This was back in 2019, so the last World Championship held in Berlin. That was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Especially because, as mentioned, I've played at the World Championship, and it's just such a different feeling from everything else. You don't have 3,000 people. You have less than 30. But it's great. Like, even the production value, and you have people from all over the world, even, obviously, the Japanese and whatnot players. And doing commentary there was great. And on the other end, though, I think we have so much fun nowadays in Europe, and especially because I have now the chance to do commentary with Alberto, which is pretty much my best friend in real life as well.
Okay.
So we know each other way back when I was, basically 12, 13 years old, playing at locals.
That's really sweet.
And just the first time I gotta say that when he joined the team and we started doing commentary together, we have so much fun. And sometimes it's for the silliest reasons. We just, joke a little with each other. And yeah, you gotta say, when he got added to the team was definitely my highlight for, having fun while doing this, even more than I did in the past. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Of course, if he's your friend and all of that. And overall, a commentary, like maybe the last thing I want to discuss today, how do you prepare for it? Do you ever get nervous? And also, like, what do you think about, like, there's a lot of decks you need to cover, a lot of things you're going to see on stream, and you want to be up to date with the cards, with the combos and all of that. Like, what's the preparation that goes in it for you?
It's definitely a good question, and I've had some joking around with a lot of the pro players in the community who either joked with me being retired or something like this. But honestly, I have to prepare arguably even more than when I used to play. Because as you mentioned, maybe as a player, sometimes the time is limited. You would only focus on the best decks and that's it. But when we do commentary at an event, it's also fun to get things mixed up. Like, I think it would be boring to get, the same matchup 17, 18 times in a row at an event. So it's really nice to look for those decks. And so what I do is pretty much the same, if not more, of when I played. So I would still look at the deck, learn the combos, especially because I think what I like to do as a commentator is what I did in my mind as a player. So I want to see the opening hands of the players, and I want to either predict what they're going through, or maybe sometimes predict a better play than what they end up doing with, which I think gives more of a,
I mean, makes commentary better. It gives it value, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. At the same time, you do get nervous at times. Because, I mean, I'm Italian, first of all, so I am emotional. And I like to, try and bring some emotions to the table. And I'm also a player, so I know what you're feeling. So especially when I see, I don't know, the matches where you get to the finals or when you get to the World Championship, which will be obviously a greatest highlight for me, this next European Championship that has been announced. Those match, I can tell you, in London, right before the final, I was really nervous. Not just for me, for my performance, not much about that. I was actually nervous to see what things were gonna happen, what was gonna happen. And if I can add some value to that, I think it's a great accomplishment, and I'm happy with doing that. And also, sometimes I get to do commentary when my friends play, which is also quite an emotional feeling, because on the one hand, obviously, I'm gonna try not to stay biased towards anyone. But you can get emotional even through that.
And you get
when
passionate.
you're, I don't know.
I think that's very wholesome, and I'm really glad we ended on this. And I'd like to encourage you guys watching that you tune into the streams. I feel like Marcello's input and insight really brings a lot of value to all of these streams and the entire commentary team and all of that. So I think it's very, very important and very valuable. And overall, talking to you today, I think has a lot of importance, and I'm so glad to have had you here with me. I think we covered a lot of important topics, and I'd like to thank you again for joining me here today.
Absolutely. Thanks to you. And as you mentioned, I just encourage everyone to start getting involved more with the events and to catch the stream. The next event for me will actually be the Italian National Championship. So I will cover with Alberto again the stream. And that will be on the first weekend of June. But so if you want to check more content, you can surely do soon enough. So thank you for having me, though.
Well, it was really, really a great experience. So for you guys, make sure to let us know what you liked about it. Of course, like the video if you did like it. And of course, check out all the other social media. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.